Welcome to the Retirement in Mexico podcast, your guide to a life of sun, sand, and possibility. If you've ever dreamed of spending your golden years under the warm Mexican sun, surrounded by breathtaking beaches, rich culture, and an exciting community, you're in the right place. We're here to guide you every step of the way with expert insights, inspiring stories, and everything you need to know to make your move with confidence. The best chapter of your life is yours to create. Let's do this. Hey, Kerry, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Taniel. Good to see you.
So, buddy, you're in San Miguel de Allende. So how did that happen, and what do you do there?
Woo! Yeah, okay. Well, let's see. I moved there 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago. Kind of a perfect storm. I was going through a divorce, getting out of a business I had started years prior in the San Francisco, Silicon Valley area. And the 2016 elections happened. So the day after the elections, I decided that it was time for me to leave the U.S., And so I didn't exactly know where to go. I sold my home, I sold 2 cars, and I packed up 2 suitcases and my golf clubs and headed to San Miguel, having never been there before. And my idea was to be there for a week and then be in Italy for a week and then be in Barcelona, Spain for a week and figure out where I was going to live outside the United States. And it was very interesting. 24 hours after I was in San Miguel, I basically never left.
Okay. So was that your first time in Mexico?
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. I started traveling in Mexico 48 years ago. I've been there dozens of times, but mostly on the coast, some inland as well. But I'd never been to San Miguel. I'd heard about it for years. I'd wanted to visit, but just never went. And so I just picked up with my 2 suitcases and golf clubs and ended up in San Miguel and been here ever since.
So where did you live in the States before?
I was 40 years in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
My last 12 years were in the northern part of the Bay Area up in Marin County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it ever get hot up there? Because I remember San Francisco, usually it's pretty chilly.
Yeah, it's a kind of a different climate when you go to North Bay of San Francisco. I was in a little town called Fairfax, and on the backside of a mountain, and it's beautiful. You get the rainy season, it gets cold and all that, but in general, you don't get the fog that you get in San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco for 6 months when I first moved to the Bay Area, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It was just fogged in.
So you moved to San Miguel 8 years ago. So like what, 2016, 17?
2016, November
2016.
Yeah.
So, were you retired? What did you do in San Miguel?
Yeah, well, let's see. The first 4 years of moving there, I was retired.
Okay.
And I did a lot of volunteer work. I developed a program for teaching kids, little Mexican kids, English at the library. And I love that because I love kids and I like to give back. So that's what I did. And then I also helped with the migrants. Thousands of migrants were coming through Central America, up through San Miguel on their way to the U.S., and I helped spearhead a project to get them food and clothing and all that kind of stuff. And then also because I love golf, I volunteered at this beautiful golf course in San Miguel for a couple of years. So I was a marshal at the golf course. So, I was keeping pretty busy. I was really liking my life. And then it just sort of, and the other thing I was doing just naturally was helping people to either visit or move to San Miguel. Just because I had a passion for it. I loved it. And I have a kind of personality that when I'm passionate about something, I can't help but share it. So I did that informally, and I did it for free, just because I loved doing it. And that kind of segued into what I'm doing now, which is a relocation service to help people move from the United States and Canada to Mexico, specifically San Miguel, but other parts of Mexico as well.
Okay. So most of the people you're helping, are they looking at like retiring in San Miguel or other parts of Mexico, or are they like younger people moving as well? Like, what are the demographics like, the age demographics?
Yeah, it's all over the map. Most people are looking to retire to Mexico, the people that I'm in touch with, probably 75%.
Okay.
And also 75% of those, they're of retirement age. But then there's 25% who are younger. I just helped a single woman from South Carolina to relocate to San Miguel. She's probably 40. There's a couple of other women who want to move together. They're younger, and they want to just leave the U.S. and establish a life. But I would say 75% are retirees. They're just motivated and ready to move to Mexico.
Why would they want to move to Mexico? Is it for the cost of living or some other reason?
Yeah, I would say the top of the list is cost of living, but way up there now since November is politics in the U.S. That's a big one.
And would you say that's also the case for the younger people moving?
Yeah, okay. Definitely. There's a huge exodus, a big influx of people who are either very serious about moving to Mexico, and there's some who are semi-serious and are checking it out. They're just not quite sure they can do it and actually leave the U.S. So I get all types, and sometimes it's interesting. In the process of helping people to move to Mexico, they get cold feet. It's like, it's a big thing, emotionally and psychologically.
Sure.
And I think it hits people sooner or later. It hit me later. It hit me once I got to San Miguel. I'd been to Mexico dozens of times, but it was always on vacation. And so I always had a place to go home to. Well, what hit me when I got to San Miguel was, wow, I don't have a plan B. I don't have a backup plan. I sold everything I own. I'm in Mexico. And so that was a little bit of a rude awakening. And now when I'm talking to people, I'm telling them that up front about how to prepare emotionally and psychologically for leaving your home country.
So what would you say are like the top 3 things that people really need to consider if they truly want to make this transition? Because like you said, like during the 2016 election, some people got very reactive to the results of the election. So they contacted me. Most of them emailed me saying, I'm leaving, I don't want to be here anymore. From all those people, none of them wound up moving. I mean, they may have contacted someone else to move somewhere else. But I think they just kind of had this knee-jerk reaction, and then they didn't make them move. But now I'm seeing things a little differently. It's been 10 years since then almost. And now people are actually packing up for that reason. Of course, there are people that are retiring, looking for lower costs of living.
Right.
So you're getting, the whole gamut. But, so what would you say, like, if someone says, I'm thinking of moving to Mexico, and you really want them to think about it, what would you say are like the top 3 things they need to answer and be really like sure of prior to making this jump?
Well, my first question is, how many times have you been in Mexico? And where have you been in Mexico? What do you know about Mexico? It's an entirely different culture, so it's a little bit of an education process for me. And I want to see where they are along that educational guideline, or that line of, what do you know? Do you know any Spanish? Do you know about the culture of Mexico? Are you used to it? I've had people contact me who have never been to Mexico. And never been to San Miguel. And
I've had clients the same thing. They've watched a few YouTube videos, they've seen, some TV shows, and they're like, I'm moving, without having stepped foot in Puerto Vallarta or anywhere else in Mexico. They just know, based on what they've seen on TV and on YouTube, like, this is good enough for me. I've got enough information. I'm out of here. Do you find people like that as well?
Oh, absolutely, I do. And I've learned my lesson, though. I'm a little more leery of that, because that could fall apart. it just, when they really start thinking about it and really getting serious, I mentioned cold feet. These are the people that get cold feet. And personally, I don't want to invest a lot of time and energy in someone who's going to back out anyhow. And so I kind of ferret that out a little bit and suss it out the best I can.
Yeah.
Like, how serious are you? What's your motivation? And again, what do you know about Mexico? Do you have some experience with it, enough to be used to it, enough to know what you're getting into?
I mean, yeah, having the right information at your fingertips and speaking with reputable people, and people that have actually made the transition, like made the move down here. I think it's really important because, you're kind of like dreaming about this big move, a big change,
right?
But then when push comes to shove and you're gathering all this fact and you're like, sometimes it's like, holy smokes, I'm liking it. And I feel like this is something I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then the butterflies just kind of, multiply and it gets more intense. And then I think comfort and fear settles in.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, am I going to really do this? I don't know anybody there. So do you find that?
Oh, absolutely. I do. And I tell you, Taniel, one thing I need to be careful with is, I'm learning this more and more, is when I'm passionate about something, I tend to lay it out there. Yeah. And so for people who are just thinking about Mexico, just thinking about San Miguel maybe, but have never visited, I have to be careful not to go into salesman mode. Like, oh my God, my life is so great. And people that live in Mexico, they say the same thing. I have to deal with them on an individual basis and meet them where they are. Because I don't want to just get so enthusiastic and then they get enthusiastic and then they go, oh my God, what am I doing? Yeah. So I have to meet them where they are and kind of scale back my enthusiasm a little bit.
Sure. And of course, sometimes Mexico is the answer for what they're looking for, but it might not be Puerto Vallarta, it might not be San Miguel, because, I think some people are more laid back, some people like more, a little bit of a city life.
Yes.
Some people don't want the city life. They won't really be kind of like a hermit. And then, of course, you've got the different climates, right? I mean, San Miguel, I don't think it gets hot and humid like Puerto Vallarta does in the summertime, does it?
Well, no, it gets hot in May and June, which means 90s, but, it's up 6,300 feet and it's dry.
It's dry.
So that's really different than Puerto Vallarta being in the 90s.
In the summertime, it's the second half of summer, it's 90, but sometimes with the humidity factor, it could hit triple digits.
Oh,
it took me like 2 or 3 years to get acclimated to the summers here, but now I don't think about it. But it's definitely not for everyone. And then sometimes people don't hang around here in the summertime. They do. Right. They want to go to San Miguel, or they might go to the States or Canada and visit their family, or travel somewhere else in the world.
They get off the coastlines. I know. And the other thing is, I know where you are, Taniel, and all along the coastlines, there's air conditioning. Air conditioning is not a thing in San Miguel.
No. Well, so you don't really need it.
May and June, it's in the 90s. It's dry, so it makes it better, but it gets a little toasty. And so I rent my house out a couple times a year, generally every winter for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So, and I go to the coastline. I used to go around Puerto Vallarta, and now I go down to where I am now in Huatulco in the state of Oaxaca every year for 3 months. And it's great. And I think that for when people come in, I rent out in May and June a little bit to go back to the States and visit friends and family. And I always tell people, look, it's going to be a little toasty and there's not really air conditioning. So be prepared for that. On the other hand, I tell people too, if they've never been to Mexico and they're looking at different locations to move to, I say go when they have the weather that's going to be most unpleasant for you to see if you can do it. Yeah. Because if you're looking to move permanently to a place in Mexico, I've kind of managed my life. I get out of San Miguel when it's a little bit colder in the wintertime, but a lot of people can't do that. So they're going to be there 12 months out of the year, pretty close. So really, land there, think about it, be in that weather. And if it's okay for you, then maybe that's your place. Yeah.
It's funny you should say that. I've had some clients over the years. I've been selling real estate in Vallarta now for more than 18 years. And I've had a handful of clients exactly that. They had never been here before, so they decided to come here the second half of summer, which is historically the hottest, most humid, and we have tropical downpours. So they got the worst out of the way, in essence. And some couldn't handle it. They're like, I don't care if this is just a couple of months out of the year. I can't deal with this.
Do it.
Even though they could always, you could always leave and go somewhere else and go on vacation or go visit.
I hear that.
It's too intense for some people, right?
It's too intense. And so when people come down in the May, June timeframe, a lot of people, it's fine for them. It's not humid. It's not unbearable. You just don't want to be out from 1 to 5 in the afternoon in the hot sun. Other than that, you can work around it.
Yeah, that's
most people do. But I have to say, Taniel, I 40 years in the San Francisco area and generally not right in San Francisco. So I experienced some wonderful weather. And coming from the Midwestern part of the United States, that was heaven for me. San Miguel has the best weather I have ever lived in, year-round weather. They call it primavera eterna, eternal spring.
Eternal spring, yeah.
It's like, even in the wintertime, when it's a little chilly at night, it's 75, 80 degrees. Yeah, it's like Puerto Vallarta. It's just fantastic weather.
Yeah. The Cuernavaca, they call it the city of eternal spring. And I've been there, and the weather there is just like, usually it's in the mid 70s.
Yes.
I filmed there a few years ago, and it was the first time I had filmed for House Hunters where I didn't sweat at all. I mean, the weather was just perfect for the entire 4 days. So there are parts of the country that's like that. Even like Jalapa, I was in Jalapa a few years ago, which is the capital of Veracruz on the East Coast. Yeah. And they actually get fogs. Do you guys ever get fogs in San Miguel?
I've seen it maybe once or twice. I have to tell you, when I first went to San Miguel, though, the very first week I was there, and I fell in love with it, it snowed.
Oh, really?
In November. And everybody's saying, I've never seen snow here. I've never seen it since. It was this fluky thing. And I'm going, what am I getting into here? But then, then the next day it's 75, 80 degrees.
So I mean, since we're talking about the weather, so if we look at from January to December, so kind of guide me through what can we anticipate in terms of temperature, rain, snow, if any. So what are we looking at as we go from January to the end of the year, temperature-wise?
Yeah. Okay. Well, San Miguel is from like November till about now, March time frame. It's beautiful. It's high season. Tourists come from the U.S., Canada, all over the world because the weather is 75 or 80 degrees. Okay. But it's down in the 40s at night. Not a big deal. Except that everything is masonry, and all these buildings are attached. Mm-hmm. And so when it gets cold at night, that cold tends to stay in the house. So the house temperature is probably 60 degrees in December, January, February, maybe part of March. And then daytime, it's beautiful and wonderful. So that's what the weather is like indoors in San Miguel during that time. It can be a little chilly, but everybody has heaters. I've got 2 propane heaters in my house. It's not a big deal. And then March, it starts to get beautiful, 55 at night, probably 80, 85 during the day. April, the same, heating up. May, June, as I mentioned, that's going to be the apex of when it's going to be pretty warm. Nights are 65, something like that, 60, 65.
That's nice.
And then, it's really nice. And then like 90 during the day. And then the rain hits. And as soon as the rain hits, it used to be 1st of June. Now it's more like June 15th. It's just gorgeous. We get these downpours, torrential downpours. I know Puerto Vallarta is the same.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, but they're not until late afternoon or evening, and it's a warm rain. It's not like being in the U.S. where the rain, it's cold and you got to be indoors and all that. It's a warm rain. And it lasts an hour or two and then it's gone. By the next day, everything's dry. You can go out and golf the next morning. You never even know it rained. So summertime is really gorgeous. I love the summers in San Miguel because it never gets up above about 82, maybe 85 because of the rains.
Okay.
And then your rains stop around probably October or something like that.
It's like that in Vallarta also.
Is that the same? Yeah.
Usually around October, the rain starts to taper off, and then we start the dry season.
Yeah, same in San Miguel. It's very pleasant. I love, maybe my favorite weather is October getting into November around Day of the Dead time. It's
Oh,
just
cool.
there's just no rain. It's just perfect temperature. And then, as I mentioned, then you get into November, December, January, February, where it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the weather then. It's just a little bit chilly at night, and the houses tend to stay a little bit chilly.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's okay. You got fireplace, you got blankets, right?
Yeah, no, it's not a problem.
So, Kerry, one of the questions I get asked quite frequently is, what's the safety like in Puerto Vallarta? So, what is it like in San Miguel? Is it something people need to be concerned with?
I would say no at all. And in general, in Mexico, I think the press in the U.S. is a little bit distorted in terms of safety in Mexico. And I think it always has been. But, it scares a lot of people.
Sure.
Mexico is terrible. The cartels, blah, blah, blah. The truth is, I have never felt safer anywhere than I felt in Mexico. And that's certainly true of San Miguel. I never have to have my head on a swivel. I never have to think about getting mugged, anything like that. Taniel, guns are outlawed in Mexico. People don't have guns. The cartels have guns, but they tend to shoot at each other, and they don't mess with tourists or foreigners. There's nothing in it for them to do that. So any violence that happens is sort of off the screen. You don't really know it, or you read about it.
But do you see like cartel fighting? I mean, is there a cartel culture? I mean, in San Miguel?
No, I never see. The only thing I saw when I first moved, like 8 years ago, there was a turf war amongst the, maybe 7 years ago, amongst the cartels. And it was all based on the new president of Mexico, Obrador, coming in. And he shut down all the oil pipeline thieves, which are called huachicaleros. Mm-hmm. And they go and drill holes in the oil pipeline, and then they put it in the back of semis and they sell it to all the peasants.
Yeah, I remember that.
You remember that? Yeah. And he shut that down. So you got thousands of people who were making a living, and they didn't have a way to do it. So the two cartels were fighting for power. And in San Miguel itself, there was some cartel on cartel violence. And I never saw it. I never experienced it. I had some friends that saw it. And it lasted for about a year. That turf war ended, and you just don't hear or see it. The only thing is, in San Miguel, and this is probably true anywhere in Mexico, if you're messing with drugs, whether using drugs, taking drugs, selling drugs, or you're walking around drunk late at night in a bad neighborhood, you're asking for trouble. I don't care.
Well, I'm from Los Angeles, and it's like that. I mean, you go to Hollywood, you go to Las Vegas, or anywhere else. If you're like you said, if you're participating and buying it and partying and doing that, then you're asking for problems, right? And I mean, you don't want to go walking down any dark alley anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. That's right.
Yeah, sure. You just have to use common sense. So another question, you talked about, like you've been there for such a long time, and people always ask me, like, what's the cost of living? And I know, it really depends on how you live, right? Your lifestyle, you like to go fine dining. But if you were to just kind of like generalize, like the average, like rent for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, are you in the rental business? Do you know much about the rental market?
I know a lot about the rental market.
Okay. So if you could help me out here, because there are people that want to rent that are relocating, and some people want to buy. So, so you got both. But if someone were to rent, let's just say a 1-bedroom apartment, you have it, like you said, you've got this lady who's 40 years old. She's coming down here alone.
Yeah.
So if she were to rent a 1-bedroom close to town, so what would that look like? And let's kind of like break it down. Like, what can you expect for electric bill, internet, transportation? So let's start with the rent. What are the ranges for the rent?
Yeah, good question. Well, just using this woman as an example, she got a 2-bedroom place in a gated community right outside of town, but it's walkable into town. It's about a 20-minute walk into Centro. Mm-hmm. It's a nice location. It's a nice place. And she's spending, I think it's $900 US, plus $100 in utilities or something. So she's right at $1,000 a month for a 2-bedroom.
2-bedroom.
If you're talking 1-bedroom, it kind of depends, because I'm kind of in the network and in the know of what's out there and how to find things. Mm-hmm. You could find a 1-bedroom for $500 a month. And San Miguel is one of the priciest cities in Mexico. I know Puerto Vallarta is up there too. But you could, if you really look, find something for $500 or $600. I don't set people's expectations at that, because it's kind of hard to find that. Yeah. Generally, a 1-bedroom furnished, let's say, you could get for $700 or $800 in a good neighborhood, plus utilities on top of that. Yeah. 2-bedroom is more like $1,000. I would say a 3-bedroom, 2-bath you could get for $1,200 to $1,500 in a good neighborhood.
Yeah, and the same thing in Vallarta. I mean, yes, I think prices have gone up everywhere in the world post-pandemic. Yeah. We've seen prices go up between 25% to double. Depending on what it is. I don't think any product or service has been left unturned post-pandemic with inflation.
I agree.
So that's unfortunate, but that's the whole planet. I don't know of any place where the inflation hasn't touched its finger, right? Yeah. So same thing in Puerto Vallarta. If you want to be closer to town, it's all about location, as we say in real estate. Right. But you might average 2-bedroom might be $1,500, but a 2-bedroom, if you're going to go 6-7 minutes inland, that's going to drop considerably. Granted, you're not walking distance to the beach. Granted, you might not have all the rooftop pool and everything else, but that option is there. You just have to be kind of flexible in terms of what are deal breakers and what's not. That's one of the nice things in PVs. Like, you do have that gamut, you have that range. Again, closer to the beach, closer to town, closer to the hub, prices go up. Further out, prices generally go down. Is that the same thing in San Miguel?
Exactly the same thing. The closer you are to Centro, where the Jardín, which is the central part of the Centro, you're going to spend more money. It's going to be more luxury sorts of places. It's going to be a higher price. The honest to God truth, though, is what I tell my clients, Taniel, is don't live in Centro. First of all, it's going to be more expensive. Secondly, it's going to be more noise. There's more activity. There's more everything there. And it's wonderful. You're right in the middle of it, but how are you going to sleep at night?
Yeah. Well, look, the romantic zone, when I moved to Puerto Vallarta in October 2003, been coming to Vallarta since November 2001. The romantic zone, people knew of it, but it wasn't what it is today. Right. And now it's like ground zero for tourism. There's tons of restaurants, retail shops. The Los Muertos beach is adjacent to the romantic zone. So, everything is here. Everybody wants to be here in terms of investment and also just to vacation. So, of course, that drives the economy and it drives prices. And that's the same, I think, anywhere else in the world, right?
I think so, yeah. And on the other hand, people don't want to live way out if they don't have a car. Like 45 minutes out by bus and taxi, that's kind of inconvenient. So there's a middle ground there. And that's where I live. I'm a 12-minute walk into Centro, so I'm away from the noise and all the festivities and all that kind of stuff. And I live on a quiet little 1-block long street that is wonderful. And it's just perfect. So I've kind of got that dialed in for my clients about that middle zone. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be right in the middle of everything, but you don't want to be too far out either.
So when you say 45 minutes to an hour out, is that still part of San Miguel?
Well, so there's some neighborhoods, gated communities that when I say 45 minutes, I'm talking walking. 45 minutes.
Well, that's I'm not walking 45 minutes.
Yeah, no.
I don't care where in the world I'm living. I am not walking 45 minutes to an hour into town. You guys have Ubers there? We have Ubers in PV. Do you have Uber?
Oh yeah. They got
all right. I'm taking an Uber. I'm taking a cab or a bus. Hey, and how is the public transportation? How are the buses there?
Really good. I don't have a car. I don't need a car. And most people don't need a car in San Miguel. You can walk everywhere. Within 20, 25 minutes, I can walk everywhere I need to go, except if I want to go out in the hot springs out in the country, or I want to go to the golf course. Well, I take an Uber or a taxi or something. No big deal.
Okay.
But the buses, it's funny. The expats aren't whenever I get on a bus, I'm the only gringo. I mean, really, it's like it's all Mexicans, and I love that. I love
Yeah.
being in that culture.
Well,
But
in Vallarta, even, I mean, a lot of people taking the bus, they're going to work. They're going to work and they're coming
right,
back home from work, right? So that's, what do you call it? The not the working class, but the people that are working, they're not retired, right? So the
yeah,
buses are
yeah,
slammed in the morning. Just same thing in
yeah,
LA. You know, the buses are full in the morning. Everyone's going to work,
right, yeah,
and people coming back. But so, and for me, when I moved to Vallarta, I didn't have a car for the first 2.5 years. But once I went to real estate, I needed a car.
right,
So
right.
what you're saying is that you really don't need a car when you're living in San Miguel, correct?
You do not need a car. I have friends that have cars, and it's really because there's so many cool things outside of San Miguel, out in the
Hmm.
country that just are amazing, and I love going out there. And so whenever they invite me, I go. And like once a month, I head out to the country for some excursion, which is very nice, and I get to hang with my friends. Some of them have cars, and that's great. But other than that, I don't have a car. Most expats I know in San Miguel, I would say 90% of them do not have a car.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have one if you're going to be a full time because I know you get to explore at your own leisure and not have
Oh,
to wait
yeah.
for a cab or a bus. So I have a question for you. Most of the people that are moving to San Miguel, foreigners, you tell me they're retiring there, and same thing for Vallarta for the most part. And healthcare is really important, right? I think
Yeah.
regardless of what age you are, healthcare is really important, but more so, when you get older. So what is the healthcare like in San Miguel and the surrounding areas? That's question number one.
Yep.
Do they have like a bilingual staff? What kind of insurance? What's the cost like? So
Yeah.
what's your opinion on that?
Yeah. Well, let me give you kind of an executive summary because when I talk to clients about it, I go into detail, and I don't want to do that now because we don't have time. But I will say they have two excellent hospitals, private hospitals, and one in particular has a great bilingual staff. That's the hospital that I have my insurance through and all that. So, healthcare is a tricky thing depending on your age, because obviously the older you get, the more you're going to spend, and the more difficult it can become if you don't have a lot of resources. So there's ways around that, as you know, Taniel. I'm sure there's IMSS
Sure.
hospital. It's like $1,000 a year. There's also the general hospital.
That's like the Social Security
Exactly.
hospitals here, right?
Right. And then there's the general hospital where once you have residency in Mexico, you qualify to go to the general hospital. I don't recommend it. The general hospital in San Miguel is not great. The IMSS hospital in San Miguel is not great. I don't know about Puerto Vallarta. So I
Well,
tell people,
I've been to one of them, and I mean, same thing for LA. You go to a county hospital, depending on where in LA, it's
right,
not the best.
right.
Sometimes it's a little scary.
Yeah.
But the private hospital here, which there are a lot of, and there are a lot of, we have a lot of clinics here as well. Do you guys have a lot of clinics in San Miguel?
Yes. Yeah. And they're
So,
great.
and
Really.
they're great. And, at least in Vallarta, I have yet to walk into a clinic or a hospital where you don't have a bilingual staff, at least, a
Right.
few people. A lot of the doctors here do speak English. Do
Yeah.
you find the same in San Miguel?
Yeah. I'd say 50-50. The ones I recommend to my clients all speak English because
Okay.
my clients generally don't.
Hmm.
And it would be really hard to navigate for them to navigate that. I speak pretty good Spanish, so I can do it, but I generally just recommend the really good doctors that do speak English, and there's quite a few of them.
If you have clients moving, like expats that are moving to San Miguel and they don't speak any Spanish whatsoever, can they still get around and communicate? Are there enough English speaking people so they don't feel like a complete foreigner, and then eventually pick up on some words and hopefully learn the language a little bit?
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'm a bit of a stickler on that. I made a decision when I moved to Mexico. I'm going to speak Spanish because I want to be part of Mexico and I want to understand the culture. And you can't understand the culture unless you understand the language. So I kind of I would say I highly encourage my clients, even before they leave the U.S. or Canada, to start learning some Spanish, and I send them resources to do that. And actually, I'm the administrator on a Facebook site where every week I'm posting my favorite expressions in Spanish that you can use that gringos don't know. And if you use them with a Mexican, you're going to be one of them, So I really encourage it. And the thing about San Miguel, though, is this. There's probably 5,000 to 10,000 expats, depending on the time of year, that live in San Miguel.
What's the general population in San Miguel?
175,000.
Well, that's not much.
No, it's not much. It's basically
decent size.
Yeah, it's a pretty good size, and a lot of that's on the outlying areas. So, it's kind of like I come in Marin County in California. My town was 7,000 people, and it's kind of like living in a town of 7,000 people, because when you go down to Centro and where everybody goes and all the restaurants and all the cool stuff, the art galleries, you bump into people, like I hardly get anything done. I go out and run a day of errands and I bump into 5 people, and before you know it, the day's over. And it's a very cool feeling, actually. But it has a small town feel to it.
Yeah.
But in terms of language, I find that you can get by very easily in San Miguel without speaking any Spanish. And I think too easily. I think that people get used to, they say, oh yeah, I'm going to learn Spanish. And then they get used to hanging out with other expats and speaking English, or going to restaurants and realize, no, I can get by. Yeah. And every once in a while they'll pick up a book because they feel guilty that they don't speak Spanish. But what I see is they always go back to English. Yeah. And that's okay. I don't mean to be judgmental. I just really feel like they'll get so much more out of living in Mexico if they know at least some Spanish.
At least try, and people will appreciate that.
Oh, so Mexicans really appreciate it.
So, Kerry, what would you say are the top reasons why Americans and Canadians fall in love with San Miguel and want to live there? And besides the weather, you told me the weather's wonderful. So what would you say are other, like, your top 5 reasons, or top 3 or 7 reasons why someone might want to move to San Miguel?
Yeah, well, the Mexican people are kind and considerate and patient and understanding and dignified, and that's one of the reasons I moved to Mexico. And it's one of the reasons why 48 years ago, when I first set foot in Mexico, which was Puerto Vallarta, I fell in love with the people. And I think there's something about, wow, these people don't have a lot of stress. They got a lot of time. They are loving and kind. They like to laugh and smile, and they're gracious. So I think people is one. The natural beauty, like Puerto Vallarta, it's beautiful. Puerto Vallarta's a beautiful place. Yeah. All the coastlines are very beautiful. When you get into the inside of Mexico to San Miguel, it's stunningly beautiful, I think. I mean, it's a 500-year-old colonial city with cobblestones, and all the different buildings are different colors, and the churches are hundreds of years old, and they're beautiful. And it's just very captivating. I think the natural beauty of Mexico. I'm in the high desert even, and I'm not even a desert guy, but I prefer jungle and trees and all that. But it's really beautiful. So I think that's another reason, the natural beauty. Natural beauty.
So cost of living?
Cost of living's way up there, of course. I think, Taniel, I don't know what your experience has been, but I tell people you're generally going to live on probably a third of what you lived on in the United States, depending. Like San Miguel is a bit more expensive. Puerto Vallarta is a bit more expensive. But I come from one of the most expensive places in the U.S., the San Francisco Bay Area.
I think also, look, there are a lot of cities, I think in the States as well, in Canada and Mexico, that's not developed. And it could definitely be a lot cheaper, but then you might not have the services, the hospitals, the grocery stores, the restaurants, the infrastructure. Right. So sometimes people say, oh, it's gotten a little pricey. Yes, but you also have to consider what kind of lifestyle do you have around you, and what kind of infrastructure do you have? What's the security like, and everything else that you need to live a comfortable life? I mean, there are some little villages you can go to, but then that's not someplace you want to live, So it's kind of like that give and take. And if you're living on like a fixed income, definitely I would say, like go to San Miguel, go to Cabo, go to like Lake Chapala, go to Mexico City. But if you want to live on the coastline, there are a lot of beautiful regions. Some of them are resort-like, some of them are undeveloped. And you just kind of go and explore and then make a decision. And for some people, watching those YouTube videos, or watching like we film House Hunters, and they feel like they've seen everything, that they just pull the trigger and they go. Right. For me, I came down here in 2001 for a big milestone birthday, and I fell in love. And back then, we didn't have YouTube. There weren't all these videos and everything else being written up about Puerto Vallarta, or even other parts of Mexico. But now, that information is out there. But definitely explore. What would you say, Kerry, are some of the most common misconceptions people have about moving to Mexico?
Oh, gosh. There's a few. One is just the difference in culture is if they don't know Mexico and they don't know the Mexican people, they tend to move at a different pace. Their sense of timing is very, very different than in the U.S. Their efficiency standards are very different. So, they are not efficient. Let's face it. In general, they tend to move slow. They say they're going to be there at 11 a.m. It might be 11 a.m. the next day. I
relate.
I know. And actually, I'm a very efficient type A kind of guy. Yeah. So I'm still learning I don't understand it, but I accept it much more than I did 8 years ago. I still don't understand it, but anyhow, that's one. I'd say the other one is, there's this expression, Taniel, you probably heard it, is Americans are noisy people looking for quiet when they come to Mexico, and Mexicans are quiet people looking for noise. And so,
but yeah.
It's like when people come to Mexico, quiet, chill, all that, and it certainly can be. But they love their festivities. They love their rockets. There's 317 celebrations a year in San Miguel. And, so you're going to get...
Almost every day?
Yeah, almost every day. But some of the cool parades, colorful indigenous parades that I think I've never gotten tired of them. Sometimes I'm pretty close to a church, and sometimes the rockets go off at 3 a.m. for some weird reason, and wakes me up. But you get used to it.
Rockets or fireworks?
Both, but there's a difference. Fireworks.
There's a difference.
Fireworks I see almost every night from my terraza, my deck. They're beautiful. They're like maybe a 10-minute walk away from me, and they go for like 15 minutes, and they are spectacular. Every wedding that happens in San Miguel, I get to see the fireworks, and that's cool. The rockets called cohetes, that's a whole different thing. That's like 10 tons of TNT going off or something. They love this noise, and there are noise regulations in San Miguel that are upheld in these noise regulations. They're federal regulations. They're upheld in Mexico City, but they're not in San Miguel. And it's not all the time, and it's not every night, but you just have to kind of get used to the fact that, they love their noise.
Well, I've noticed the culture loves to celebrate life.
Yes.
And it's not like, they're big party animals. It's not that, because, you don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow. And the culture here, from my experience of living here, how long have I been here now? 2003, over 21 years I've been living here. Yeah. They enjoy life. They celebrate life. So it's not like, they want to go out and get drunk every night. That's not it. They celebrate time with their family and friends and dinners and events. It's really about that. Because I think, as an American, you usually plan on your vacation. You get 2 weeks off for most people. Right. And it's like, why wait until then? So they do wind up just celebrating life. I guess that's the best way that I could put it.
That's a really good distinction. I like that. It is that. It's a manifestation of them celebrating life. And that has to do with celebrations and parades. It has to do with color. It has to do with connections with other human beings. It has to do with laughter. They celebrate life. That is true.
So, Kerry, we're kind of getting close to the end, so I want to ask you a few more questions. So, you guys, you help most of your clients are Americans. Or do you get Canadians as well wanting to move?
Currently I don't have Canadians. I have
Okay.
a number of them that I'm in touch with that may, and I have in the past, but mostly right now it's Americans.
Okay. And do you only focus on relocation to San Miguel, or do you have like a network for some of the other cities throughout the country where expats tend to gravitate to?
Yeah, I have established a network, and I'm continuing to establish a network for people who want to move to Mexico. They're not sure about San Miguel. And I say San Miguel's not for everybody. So I have connections in Playa del Carmen, Merida, Cancun, Mexico City. Puerto Vallarta, I don't yet. I need to get
I'm
that.
here.
Oh, good. I know you're the guy.
Wow.
I know, that's perfect for me. And then Morelia.
Okay.
And there's other places like in northern Mexico, like Monterrey, although most gringos don't end up in Monterrey.
No.
Puebla, places like that I'm still establishing. So if people come to me and say, yeah, San Miguel, but yeah, I don't think it's my place. I say, okay, go check, get a hold of this person and talk to them, and they will tell you everything it is about Puerto Vallarta or Merida, and they will be your right-hand relocation person.
That's great that you have that resource for people. That's really important, right?
I think so, yeah.
So Kerry, let's just say that what are the top 5 tips you can give to expats for moving to Mexico? Like, what are the top 5 things they should keep in mind or do as they're making this transition?
Okay, yeah, there's a lot. But, if they're still in the U.S., let's say, or Canada, as I said before, I'm saying, well, start to get your ducks in a row in terms of what you want to take to Mexico. Do some research on things you can't get in Mexico and what you might want to bring down. And I can give them some feedback on certain things that they're difficult to find in Mexico. Start to study some Spanish. Doesn't have to be every day, doesn't have to be a lot, but just enough to kind of say hi and thank you, and just to sort of feel like you're part of the culture a little bit.
And how long in advance should they start this process? I mean, do you think they could just pack everything up in 2 weeks and come down? I mean, how many months, if they're going to be working with you, for example, like what's the lead time you would say they should give themselves before they move?
That varies a lot, Taniel. I'd say 3 months just off the top of my head.
Minimum 3 months?
From inception to actually having boots on the ground in Mexico. And then it's another 3 months. So when I work with people, my cycle is generally around 6 months. 3 months in the home country, we're getting them ready. 3 months once they get to Mexico, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure they have housing and healthcare, and they're going to the right doctors, and they know how to integrate into the culture, whether that be the Mexican culture, the expat culture, how to establish community, all those sorts of things. But getting back to your question, one of the tips is housing is a big thing. Housing's a big thing. And because it can go south in so many different ways in Mexico, as you know, probably more than most. And I'm not talking just renting, it could be buying, be really careful. I made some mistakes because I was one of these guys who said, I'll just pack my bags and go to Mexico, and I thought I knew Mexico until I got
when you say be careful, I mean, does that mean like you did this on your own? You should hire a professional? What do you mean by being careful?
Well, I say hire a professional because there's a lot of things that you don't know about when you move into a house. Let's say you're renting a place and you look, nice place. I went and looked at it. The price is right. Great. Well, you move in and you find out there's a mani-pedi place in the garage next door, or a rug cleaning factory, or a woodworking shop next door. And the fumes and the chemicals and the noise and whatever, or there's a band that likes to practice in the garage next door. Whatever, or across the street. You hear all these stories. One of the big stories, when I first moved to San Miguel, someone bought a place right up above the bull ring. Beautiful, beautiful view of San Miguel, way up in the hills. And the bull ring, there's 2 bullfights a year. What's the big deal? Well, a month after they moved in, the city said, we're going to have concerts in the bull ring every weekend. and it blew them away. They sold their house. So I tell people, go buy, and not only look at the house, but go buy several times, even buying, renting throughout the day, in the evening, different times of the day. Talk to the neighbors, see if there's an empty lot next door that's going to be built on, that's going to be 2 years of construction as soon as you move into this house. All those sorts of things, really I wrote a whole blog about this, Taniel, because it's so important. Sure. And so my clients, I say, look, I can help you find housing. I've got the contacts, I got the resources, I can give you feedback on neighborhoods, but it's up to you to go by and really check it out very thoroughly. And here's what you want to look for. So housing's a big one.
And that's really important because I've talked about this in the past with my friend Risa Morimoto. We've done a lot of these videos together, and a neighborhood might be one vibe in the daytime, and at night it's something totally different.
Yes.
So it could be really busy in the daytime, and you think, it's going to be so busy at night, and it's the opposite, and then vice versa.
Right.
It could be really quiet in the daytime, and at night all the restaurants and there are bars that are opening up. So I like that tip you gave is, go back in the evening, different times of the day to see, what's happening in the neighborhood, because it could be day and night,
It is so true. And that's a big one. And then there's the whole thing with roof dogs, in San Miguel and all over Mexico. The dogs live on the roof. They never come down. And they might be quiet when you're looking at the place, but it's
not like that everywhere, but yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Have you seen it in San Miguel? There's quite a bit of that. So you just have to be careful.
Sure. So, Kerry, if somebody wants to get a hold of you and to learn more about relocating to Mexico, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, there's various ways. So my email address is Kerry, that's my first name, Kerry, at expatmx.com. So Kerry at expatmx.com. My website is expatpathwaymexico.com. So people can see a lot about what I do and how I do it. Oh, and what they can do on that website is I give a half-hour free consultation.
Oh, great.
So if they sign up for this free consultation, it gives us a chance to kind of get to know each other, for me to answer their questions, for me to explain about living in Mexico, San Miguel, or other parts, what I know from 48 years of traveling in Mexico. That's the first step, is to do this half-hour free consultation. If they feel like I have some value to give to them beyond that, then we take the next step and I can start working with them.
And so you do this, they're actually contacting you directly, not someone else.
They're contacting me directly. So that's how I work. I'm just one-on-one.
So, that's tough. So how many clients can you handle at one given? So you can't possibly help 100 people at the same time. So usually, how many people do you work with at one particular time? And then do people have to be like on a waiting list?
Yeah, that has happened. It's a 5 max, 5 people max. There's people who do volume relocation businesses in Mexico. You probably know some of them. That's not me, and I don't ever want to be that.
You're more like a customized hands-on person.
I call it a white glove relocate. I'm in touch with people that I work with every day if they want to be on WhatsApp or email or talking. I just want to be there. So when they're standing in line trying to get their internet hooked up and then nobody there speaks English, I'm a phone call away from helping them. And I can't do that if I have a volume business. And it wouldn't be very gratifying for me to just, run numbers and make money and not provide good service. Yeah. So 5 is my max.
So can you repeat your email and your website again for me?
Yeah, Kerry, Kerry, at Expat, MX, as in Mexico, mx.com. And then Expat pathwaymexico.com. And I'll also mention one other site, Taniel, that I administer. It's a Facebook site, and it's quite active. It's for people thinking of moving to Mexico, and it's called Making Mexico Your Home. Just look it up on Facebook. join that group. And I'm putting stuff out there all the time. Other people are contributing, and it's a great site.
Great. Kerry, thank you so much for your time. That was a lot of great information. I get asked all the time, people, they want to relocate to some other part of Mexico. And it's always important to get in contact with someone who's been there for a while, who knows all the ins and outs. And it sounds like you're the guy. Thank you again so much for joining us today. And I hope to see you in person real soon.
Thank you, Taniel. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to being in touch with you.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Your retirement in Mexico starts right here, and we're excited to be part of your journey. Every episode, we bring you the magic of Mexico, insider tips, and expert advice to help you take that next big step with confidence. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps others like you discover the endless possibilities waiting south of the border. Got a topic you'd like for us to cover? We'd love to hear from you. Send your suggestions to info@TanielChemsian.com. And remember, a life well lived isn't left to chance. It's created with intention. See you next time.